Well, Freedom Day has come and Freedom Day has gone and the UK is on the road to full recovery. Well, at least that's what the government propaganda is saying, which is being rolled out across the mainstream media like there's no tomorrow. But the question that remains for normal people to be answered basically is whether this Machiavellian approach can succeed, because that's what it is, the Machiavellian approach. Can it really succeed in reviving an ailing economy and a sick NHS? But unlike the Garth Brooks lyrics that tomorrow never comes, it bloody well does. And it has come, and everybody else has noticed it. Everybody else in the world is taking notice of it. Maybe not the government, but yet again, the Boris buffoons and the Farage fools seem intent on ignoring the facts. And they are absolutely determined to accept more deaths, to accept more tragedies. And it's plain to see they're in possession of the same evidence that I've got. Now, I think it's important that we take account of what our doctors and nurses are saying right now. And it's very simple. It's irresponsible and frankly perilous that the government has decided to press ahead and lift the remaining COVID-19 restrictions, not lockdown. In doing so, the government is reneging on its own promise to be led by the data and impact on the NHS. And let's be honest about it, the government had reneged on that promise even before restrictions were lifted, because in Wembley, according to Farage, there were 250,000 people there, and according to Silverstone, there was 125,000 people there. So if that's what lockdown, if that's what restrictions are like, what are you complaining about, boys? You know, they also said that scrapping the remaining restrictions when a significant proportion of the population, and it is significant, have not been fully vaccinated will give us a deadly virus with an opportunity to retighten its grip. And while the government has said it will continue to encourage the wearing of face masks, within the same breath, ministers confirmed that masks will not be mandatory, nor would there be any restrictions on large gatherings at indoor or outdoor events. Now, they also said that though the Prime Minister emphasised the importance of slow and cautious approaches, the reality remains that the government and their ministers just threw caution to the wind by scrapping all those regulations in one fell swoop with potentially, let's face it, devastating consequences. Now, I only hope that people around the world do not see this government, the actions of this government, as some form of reflection in the callousness perhaps of British-minded businessmen that could carry over into international trade. I mean, it's a serious concern because the world is watching. Because, you know, when it comes to public statements of the success of the rollout of the vaccine, Boris and his buffoons are quick to point out how great things have worked out, how wonderful it's been. You know, how much more advanced, we have the best vaccine rollout program in the world. You know, let's leave aside the 130,000 people who've died. Let's leave that aside for the moment. Let's just look at the vaccine rollout. So let's make it very clear here. And I think we need to say this to these people that keep rolling this crap out, especially the people who say no need for masks, no need for restrictions and gathering. The only score that matters in a match is the one when the referee blows the final whistle. That's the only one that matters. Now, what I'm going to give you now are the first half results and the second half results. But I can't give you the final results yet because we're still playing extra time, okay? As you can see from the graphs, Boris has been lying, and so will the rest of that front bench, because the graph shows the reality. I chose UK, Ireland, Israel, and Malta. Malta is the best in the world. UK, Ireland, Israel, they're average. Israel was way ahead at the beginning, but now it's about the same, because, you know, when it comes to fully vaccinated people, and it does need to be fully vaccinated, you can see they're all within a couple of points of each other, okay? And the same applies to those who've received the first jab, exactly the same. But this is about the change, because the vaccination rates and all in Israel, in Ireland and in Malta, well, guess what? All of their graphs are going in a really quite a steep northward direction, whereas in the UK, they're going a southwesterly direction, or westerly, southwesterly, but they're not going north. So I would expect Ireland is going to be fully vaccinated within the next 6 weeks, maybe less than that, because they've got the Janssen vaccine, which is a one-shot vaccine. So they're going to be fully vaccinated. They're already starting to vaccinating the 18 to 20-year-olds. People can already get those vaccines at 18 years of age. Okay, so mid-August, late August, they'll be finished. So let's face some stark reality here. And it's coming from the science out of Israel, because they've had longer to do it than anybody else. Okay? But these facts are also available to the British government science and the NHS, and they've passed that on to the UK, I'm sure. But it hasn't even broken the government's stride. You know, I seriously believe we could be forgiven for thinking that we may as be like one of those guys waving bye-bye to the people on the docks while we sailed off on the Titanic. And I think it's that dangerous. So what's been found out? What's been proven? Well, the news is not good. Evidence has shown, there's no doubt about it, it's categorical, that the vaccinations prevent people spreading the disease. Absolutely. But if you receive the vaccine in January, 6 months later, you're probably going to catch it and pass it on to somebody else, if you don't get it under control. Because after 6 months, the barrier to spreading it to somebody else is down to 18%. So, you know the Star Trek analogy, cheddar shields at maximum? Well, the maximum shields are down to 18%. And these aren't opinions, this is fact. Okay? So everybody can pass it to everybody. Now, before you go jumping on your keypads, there's a hugely reduced chance of suffering from serious complications for those who have received the jab. The problem is that even amongst those that have been jabbed, 10% of those who catch the virus after being jabbed will require treatment in hospitals. And of those, 6% will require ventilation. So we've got to slow this thing down. Science will catch up, but we've got to slow it down. And allowing everybody to go happy clappy around the place is not the way. And just so that everybody's aware, in June last year, May, June, last year, we know from a HSC study of 22,000, or 21,000 rather, critically ill patients, 15,500 had received high dependency unit care, and 5,500 had received ICU care. The mortality rate in the high dependency unit of those 15,500 was 28%. And in the ICU of the 5,700, 42% of those people died. Now, admittingly, they were much older, but this whole idea that it only kills older people is simply not true. It's not borne out by the facts. It is not borne out by the facts. It will kill across the... It doesn't care what age you are. It doesn't care what color you are. It doesn't care. Now, by the way, the figures I'm using are from the Strategic Data Collection Service, the SDCS. And as all habits die hard, I will leave a link in the description below. So I thought it may help to demonstrate the differences between our irresponsible government and our irresponsible media and those of other countries. So we're going to see a short clip here of how the Israelis have responded. And let's not forget, they had a similar vaccine program to the UK.
First, the ongoing COVID pandemic in Israel and the 1,300 new cases just in the last day have forced another meeting of the government's coronavirus cabinet today as they approve now the return of the so-called Green Pass, requiring negative COVID tests or proof of immunity in order to enter large venues with more than 100 people. Now, fears have increased about the effectiveness of the current vaccines against the now dominant Delta strain of the virus. And the health ministry is also recommending the government expand the list of so-called red countries.
Prime Minister urging Israelis not to go abroad and are going to be added to a red list or a banned countries list. Some of those countries are indeed the United Kingdom. If you do indeed fly to a banned country, you are dealing with a fairly hefty fine, around $1,500. So it does appear as though the leaders of the Corona cabinet are not pushing to close things down just yet, but are trying to up the ante when it comes to restrictions and different measures to be in place so that Israel can, and the authorities, the health authorities, can really track the virus and contain the virus. We're also seeing a focus being, as Israel is still trying to slow the spread of the virus, still some concerning numbers here with also serious cases steadily on the rise. And it does appear as though after everything that some of these different figures in the Israeli government who were around during the first 3 waves of the virus are trying to take some of those lessons and apply them here, so they're not playing catch up. But for now, it does appear as though under Naftali Bennett's leadership, they're not trying to enter a lockdown and trying to prevent that by controlling and keeping a close eye on how the virus is affecting the Israeli public.
And there you have it. Within hours of that data arriving, the data was presented to the government on the Monday evening. They put in the restrictions on public life midnight Tuesday. They limited access to large indoor events. They instigated a raft of new fines for those violating the health rules, and they reinstated their Green Pass. They kind of added that on to their Green Pass system, which they'd used earlier in the year. Restrictions were reinstated for indoor events attended by more than 100 people. Okay? Access to large gatherings, more than 100 people, now limited to those who are vaccinated or have recovered, or who present a negative PCR test within 72 hours of that event. Now, while gatherings aren't limited in size, vaccines are compulsory and face masks are mandatory among the people vaccinated. Now, these restrictions apply also to outdoor events as well as indoor events. So, but not only have they been forced to introduce these measures, but venues have also now must have a dedicated coronavirus monitor, not a member staff that does 2 jobs, 1 monitor, and they must ensure that the rules are being followed. And they are also required to post signs that are operating under the Green Pass rules. If not, fine, pay up. Aside from such other events, aside from those events, all businesses in Israel now, including stores, garages, hairdressers, clothes shops, are prohibited from granting entry to anyone not wearing a face mask. Why did they do all this? Well, here's the shocker. They had 1,400 new cases diagnosed on the weekend last. On Tuesday, they hit at midnight. They came in with the new restrictions. And what did the UK have on the same day? They had 46,000. So allowing for the UK's population, if the same rate of infection was occurring here as it is in Israel, one would expect an incident rate of about 9,500. So basically speaking, the UK's system is 5 times worse, but it is going certainly to get a lot worse, according to the statistics, which of course Boris and the news media need to be reminded of, are facts. And for them, their message is, let's go party. And let's not forget, the Conservatives have a stranglehold on the House of Commons. They can introduce any legislation they like. In Israel, there's more parties, political parties in the Israeli parliament than there are varieties of dolly mixtures. You know, the next one here is a graph that shows how the vaccine's ability to stop the spread factor looks like. And I remind you that in the early stages, you can see that more than 80% of those fully vaccinated were not contagious. But as the months go by, that changed. And those vaccinated now are just as likely to spread that virus. So in summary, there's something I'd like to add, and I think it's very important. It is very important. We have to mention here the UK's relationship throughout the rest of the world and its reputation. Now, Boris Johnson and his antics have really damaged, let's not joke around. It has really damaged the UK's reputations, okay? And I was reading up on news coming out of Southeast Asia in Indonesia, Thailand, Malaysia, and Korea. I think it was in Vietnam as well, but I'm not sure. And they are aware that the UK has blocked the export of most medications used for the treatment of COVID. Nobody else has done that. The US have done something similar, but Europe hasn't, only the UK. And people are aware of it. And I really hope that this is not going to, that attitude or that feeling is not going to roll over into international trading with UK companies. I think there's a danger of it. And the stupidity being shown by the British government is just being regarded as a joke. But thanks for joining me.
We've got a picture of you eating it there. So what kind of example
All good
do you...
things in moderation.
I mean, there you are, scoffing it. I mean, come on, Mr. Hancock, you're the health secretary. The banana, fine.
Yeah,
this...
but we're all allowed a bit of joy in our lives, and you need you need to be up and ready to go at it.
How long is this casual sex ban going to last?
Was it?
I mean, I know what it means to you and Mrs. Hancock, but what does it
That
mean?
was exactly how I was going to answer.
Yeah.
I know that I'm in an established relationship.
Okay, what about other people?
And you're an adulterer
I need to
when
take-
you had, excuse me, and you're an adulterer that two-timed your wife and she's got 3 kids.
Listen,
You're
Kim,
talking about
Kim.
decency. Oh, come on,
I
darling.
need to take you up the stairs, though.
That means anybody can bend the rules on that, can't they?
I wouldn't suggest that. I wouldn't suggest bending the rules. I would suggest sticking to them letter and spirit.
Okay, it's good to see you. Thank you very much indeed for joining us, doing a great job. Thanks.